Opposition business. I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will you please call Bill 133, the Social Media Responsibility Act?
Public bills for second reading. Bill 133. I'm going to find it. Social Media Responsibility Act. I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And may I make an introduction first before I start?
Please do.
In the gallery opposite, we have with us a number of outstanding advocates related to the issue we'll debate here shortly, and we have, I'll call the names if they could rise. We have first a few folks from Unplugged Canada. We have Jenna Post, Robin Keane, and Bethany Lund, and then also Marcy Martin from Phone Free Schools. If you could rise up and get the applause of the House, please.
Welcome to the House. We hope you enjoy your time here. I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I wanted to kick off the debate today, which is a very important topic, by thanking the government for putting out a release today highlighting the issue and make sure that they're paying attention. It's important that Nova Scotians know that opposition members are putting forward ideas worth debating. I think that most members agree in this House that there is a simple truth in that our youth are not okay. If you talk to teachers, counselors, parents, they'll tell you the same story, that kids are more anxious, more depressed, and more withdrawn than at any other time in recent memory. I would also submit that we are losing entire generations to this rush for likes and less of an ability to cope in the world. We're witnessing a profound shift in the nature of childhood itself, and it's no coincidence that it began at the same time of the rise of smartphones and social media. Psychologists refer to this as the great rewiring of childhood, and it has come at a devastating cost. So I want to talk about the mental health emergency with a few facts. That since around 2012, roughly when social media became ubiquitous and embedded in everyday life, mental health of teens has declined dramatically. Suicide rates among children aged 10 to 14 have more than doubled. Emergency room visits for self-harm have skyrocketed. And surveys consistently show record levels of loneliness, sadness, and despair. These are the same patterns you see throughout the Western world, in Canada here, in the United States, in the UK, and other nations. And what has changed is that childhood has moved online. And think about what childhood used to be. You learn resilience by facing challenges, navigating playground politics, handling rejection, bouncing back from awkward moments, and these experiences built what psychologists call a psychological immune system. But now, instead of learning to cope in the real world, kids are exposed to daily, algorithmically curated feeds that amplify comparison, ridicule, and exclusion. Their immune system against stress never has a chance to develop. And the result? Teens are more fragile, more anxious, and less able to handle the normal ups and downs of just growing up. And the thing about this is it's not by chance. These multi-billion-dollar companies actually admit it. It is addiction by design. Every like, every notification, every endless scroll, which I see members doing as I speak, are not neutral features. They're carefully designed to exploit brain's dopamine systems, the same system that gets hijacked by drugs and gambling. The brains are rewiring from dopamine desensitization. A 13-year-old doesn't stand a chance against trillion-dollar algorithms fine-tuned to keep them hooked. And it works. Studies show teens spend an average of nearly 5 hours a day on social media. 5 hours that could be spent sleeping, studying, playing, sports, or simply being friends face-to-face. Their brains need more and more, and they feel less and less. We would never hand a pack of cigarettes to a middle schooler. We'd never give them vodka. We wouldn't let them loose in a casino. Yet social media combines elements of all three: addiction, risk, and exploitation. And we're handing this to kids. It's not limiting choice. I've heard that argument before. This is about giving kids back their choice. And the harm is not spread evenly. Girls are actually especially hit hard, according to the data. Dates of depression among teenage girls have surged since the arrival of Instagram and Snapchat, specifically. Black youth and 2SLGBTQ plus teens, already more vulnerable to discrimination and socialization, are disproportionately harmed. Higher rates of cyberbullying, online harassment, and exposure to harmful content. This isn't just a generational crisis, it's an equity crisis. And social media is amplifying vulnerabilities and widening gaps in mental health outcomes. And I want to focus on what's being lost. Beyond the undisputed statistics, we need to talk about what they're missing out on. Sleep, number one, destroyed. 1 in 3 teens now get less than the recommended amount of rest, largely because of late night scrolling and fear of missing out. In-person friendships are declining. Kids hang out less, date less, and spend less time outside. They are trading real human connection for curated versions of on-screen. Even basic milestones like getting a driver's license or applying for a first job are now delayed. When life is lived online, the urgency of independence fades. And parents know this, they see it happening in their homes every night, and they also feel helpless. Because if they try to control access to their child, then other children have it and their child doesn't, and they get further stigmatized, further isolated. And that's why this can't be solved at the household level alone. It demands collective action. That's what government's here for. So a few points. Number one, this is why we need to take this action. Because the adolescent brain is uniquely vulnerable. The prefrontal cortex, the part that manages the impulses and the decision-making, don't fully mature until late adolescence. That's why we chose the age, along with precedent with the other jurisdictions taking action. This means kids are neurologically defenseless against addictive pull of social media. Second point, because harm is measurable and urgent. We're not talking about vague concerns or moral panic. We're talking about hard data, rising depression, rising anxiety, and rising suicide. And I would go to bet that since school started just a few days ago, that members like myself are already receiving emails related to online bullying. I know that because I see emails coming through with children already being bullied online. Even though phones are banned in some schools for some grades, it's a half measure, it's a step in the right direction, but we still have the issue of needing to have it in place for pre-primary to 6, for all grades. Third point, because precedent exists. And I note that the government did write a release that it's difficult to look at this issue from a provincial or state level, as we'd say globally. That's a fair comment. However, it has to start somewhere, and that's actually how it started literally everywhere else in the world, from the state level. We already restrict things that are harmful. I mentioned them. You can't buy alcohol, you can't buy cigarettes under the age of 18, 19. Because society recognizes that some industries exploit immaturity for profit, and social media should be treated the same way. Several U.S. states have taken this action, talking about the state level. Blue and red, by the way. This shouldn't be a political issue about left or right. And you'll see that when I name the states that are already passing laws restricting minors' access to social media. Florida may have been once a swing state, definitely more on the Republican side, more on the conservative side. Utah and California and New York all moved in this direction. Australia is where we've seen a premier who wanted to take leadership and actually bring this idea forward. Then it went to the national level. Australia, who follows the same parliamentary democracy that we do. And this is being debated across Europe in many different countries and subnational governments. The urgency's there, and I believe it will happen in Canada at some point, and somebody needs to start speaking up. I want Nova Scotia to lead in the way we did for banning smoking inside bars. or more recently when some members were in the House that are still here when we banned flavored tobacco. The same arguments could and actually were made then about why not to act on the evidence. So we can continue to allow trillion-dollar corporations to dictate the terms of childhood, or we step in and find a way for kids to get their childhood back without the algorithmic manipulation. So we can wait for the federal government, as the government release seems to want to do, or we can support this bill. At the very least, we're talking about it today. So we, as a third party, only get so many opposition days. This isn't something that it was an impulse reaction to bring a bill forward. I've been thinking about this for at least a year. And I've never been one to shy from issues that are difficult to talk about and take a stand on issues. It's not about rejecting technology. It's about responsibility. Just as we protect kids from alcohol, tobacco, and gambling, we must protect them from social media. Because at the end of the day, this is not about politics for myself and my colleague, or profit or convenience. It's about protecting children's lives, their future, and their ability to thrive. So let's give them back their sleep, their friendships, their resilience, their joy. Let's take the step that's required as a province who's responsible in the jurisdiction of education, of healthcare, mental health, justice. Let's take that step and move forward and support a bill as we await the petition going to the House of Commons from a Liberal member, but I understand members from all parties in that House support moving forward on this. Let's support banning Silicon Valley from controlling the lives of our children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before I recognize the next speaker, I'd ask the member to formally call the bill for second reading. I recognize the member for Timberley Prospect.
Okay, I'll move second reading for Bill 133.
Bill 133, Social Media Responsibility Act. I recognize the member for Halifax, Little Sable Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm always pleased to rise and talk about how to support the well-being and mental health of Nova Scotian children and youth. The impacts of social media are faced by youth, families, teachers, and all those who work with young people around the world. We have enough access to enough research to know the harms are real. I will table this, but looking at an editorial piece from the Canadian Medical Association Journal talks about, they summarize by saying evidence from a variety of cross-sectional, longitudinal, and empirical studies indicate smartphone and social media use in the increase of mental distress, self-interest behavior, and suicidality amongst youth. There's a dose-responsive relationship, which means more the worse, and the effects appear to be greatest among girls. And along with the Canadian Medical Association, as well as the Canadian Pediatric Association has also issued a call to action, again, really recognizing the negative effects of social media on young people. And this isn't the first time that, as a legislature, we have grappled with this. Under the previous NDP government, we tried to address situations around cyberbullying with a legislative solution, and it proved to be really tricky, actually. So we know that things need to be done. We also know it's hard to do. And as my colleague outlined, and as we've heard from experts, we know about the harm of online bullying, the potential for sexual exploitation, encouragement of eating disorders and self-harm. The list goes on and on. And then as well, the developmental effects on young people. At the same time, we live in a world where communicating through social media is the norm for most young people, whether it's to find community, connect across the globe, or mobilize people to a cause. So on one hand, while queer and trans young people are extremely vulnerable in our schools and online, it's also a way for folks to connect with other people if they don't have that safety in their home or they don't have people to connect to in their community. I also think of Indigenous youth who access social media and online forums to learn language, that it's a way for young people who are scattered across a territory to be able to come together and learn about their culture from each other. So I think that the question of how to manage social media and young people's well-being will be an ongoing issue, and it's an urgent issue. Social media will continue to evolve, and I think our ways of trying to control it are in development. Some of the things that the CMA had to say, the Canadian Medical Association, they talked about things like there's a need for public awareness campaigns. So these are the types of things that we can do now. There's a need for public awareness campaigns and social policy initiatives that promote nurturing home and school environments. The Canadian Pediatric Society, in their call to action, also offered a number of recommendations for policymakers. Strengthen the standards for age verification within social media apps. Fund continued research on the impact of social media. Require that information on engaged and critical use of social media be included in both teacher training and in the school curricula. Restrict access to harmful advertising that target youth. And they also call upon noting that a hallmark of adolescent health is respect for youth autonomy. And so also calling upon a system that includes youth in the conversations about what's harmful and how to address it. So I think that there's lots that we could be doing right now to support the well-being of Nova Scotia children and youth. I would say that Nova Scotia children and youth are still not getting the mental health services that they need. For last spring, for the period ending June 30th, the IWK and Nova Scotia Health continued to report long wait times for most of Nova Scotia, exceeding their goal times for non-urgent care. And so just to give an example of that, from April to June of 2025, 50% of waiting young people had their first appointment through mental health in the CBRM within 77 days, and within the IWK within 52 days. So that's 50% of people get in within 77 days. I think that's too long for young people. That's a semester at school, that's a year, that's potentially a year loss. And that's another month for 50% to have had their first treatment. So, I mean, obviously those are statistics. We could game them out in terms of like what are the outer ends of the spectrum. But the simple matter of the fact is that young people in Nova Scotia who reach out for help and support don't get the help they need within the right time frames. And across the province, the mental health wait times, and I'll table these, continue to be all over the map. So the system has not stabilized at all. In some regions, the wait time will go down, it'll crash back up in the next quarter. And so there's lots to be done in this area. We also have questions about how the rollout for the program that's paying private practitioners to provide public services is helping young people, and we're looking forward to an update on that. We also had recently the first child death review for Nova Scotia, and I would encourage all members to read it. You know, the majority of children's deaths are preventable. The majority of children's deaths are due to accidents, and accidents are preventable. I mean, this is a huge campaign that the IWK has led before. And other vulnerabilities, again, where we could do better. So for instance, trans and gender diverse children and youth who died by suicide were overrepresented in the review by a factor of 4. So we still have a long way to go in supporting queer and trans youth in this province. You know, I think we need to see more from this government to stand up to bullying and to be an exemplary government. I've invited the Premier on a number of occasions to condemn homophobia and transphobia in this House, not trying to score a political point, but because I know it's important for people to hear. And I know it's important for young people to hear. And yet, that hasn't happened yet. You know, we had guidelines revised with young people to support trans and gender diverse students that have been apparently abandoned, and we're still waiting for a 2S LGBTQIA action plan. And I want to tell you that that all matters to young people. When young people write me, or we meet, or you know, young people are concerned. Queer and trans young people are concerned about how they are going to be able to grow up and thrive in this province. And I think at this point, there's been some good words from this government, but there's been no action. And people are starting to realize that, and young people are feeling abandoned by that lack of action. I also think we need to think about young people and housing. So we can do a lot better in supporting our young people. Lots of young people, most young people begin life as renters, so facing fixed-term leases, the lack of an enforcement unit, the lack of real rent control. We just had the release of the 2024 HRM point-in-time count survey, which is a review of homelessness. And the percentage age of first homelessness episodes are the most is within the age range of 13 to 19 years old. And then the second is 20 to 29. So essentially, the majority of folks who experience homelessness experience it for the first time as a young person. And also of the reporting folks, 23%, just trying to find that, 23% were former youth in care. So I think every time I look at that, I know that we're failing young people in this province, that we can do a whole lot better. And so I think that social media is an urgent concern. I think it's where, a lot of the concerns of the most vulnerable young people in our communities can be exploited. I think government has a role to step in and protect young people from that. I think it should be done in consultation with young people. I think this would be a great issue, for instance. The other thing the government has promised, this government has promised, and I think you're on your fourth minister, they're on their fourth minister at this point, but maybe fourth time's the charm in community services / opportunities and social development. There's been a promise for a child and youth advocate. And the government has undertaken consultation with young people. The government has undertaken consultation with folks who work with young people across the province, and yet we still don't have a child and youth advocate. Like I said, all previous ministers under this government have declared their full intention and support, so we'll wait and see. But, this is really I feel like our young people are really struggling in Nova Scotia. When I look at the results in the Student Success Survey, when I look at the results of wait times for mental health services, when I look at housing, and a child and youth advocate would be a great place for the research and the advocacy and young people's voices to come together and look at the critical issues facing young people and bring forward solutions. And with that, I will take my seat.
I recognize the honourable member for Cole Harbour-Dartmouth.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to rise and speak to this bill. We recognize the challenges confronting young people, and we continue to focus through public health to provide support and through all departments of government, actually. I am very familiar with this, in particular as a dad and as somebody who was in the education system for 30 years as a principal and a school supervisor. And so this is an issue that is very important to me. And quite frankly, I agree with much of what the member across the aisle had to share on this topic. I am, however, concerned that this bill simply misses the mark and is more of a headline than a policy. The reality is that there was a study in 2022 from Media Smarts that found that 86% of youth between the ages of 9 and 11 have social media accounts and are on at least one platform. Nearly 77% of youth have their own smartphones, with most being given between the ages of 11 and 13. So we currently have a reality where most kids are on social media accounts and most are given cell phones by their parents to be able to access them. Absolutely, there have been numerous studies over the years that show a connection between poor youth health and social media. This has been an issue over a decade now, and is especially problematic because of the cell phones and computers that we have access to. I do not, however, believe that this bill will address this issue. Some parents may be allowing their children to have limited access to social media. Some may want to know about ways to better limit access, but don't know how. There is an opportunity to help better explain to parents how they can limit access to social media other than simply taking it away. But this bill would take that away from parents, while also failing to be effective at actually limiting access to social media. We all know how kids operate. They'll find a workaround, and as soon as one child in a school finds a workaround, everybody that they know will have access to it. The reality is that this bill will be thwarted on day one. It could be as simple as getting a VPN to get around the limitations of this bill, create an account, and be able to access moving forward. The simple prohibition of social media access through this bill will simply be circumvented. This bill also ignores the larger conversation that is being had and must continue to be had regarding the dangers of the internet and the need to be on guard while online. Just like in all aspects of the lives of youth, they must keep an eye out for concerning characters online. This conversation we need to be having with our youth as we give them the tools to safely navigate social media. Something not captured in this bill is other methods of communication online, including video games. You have games like Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft that have large audiences with young people, and they are communicating with other players. While this has an inherent risk that comes along with it, the best way to fix this is through education, not legislation. The Liberals point to Australia and Norway as examples where this bill is in effect and how they're following their lead. There are a few points I'd like to touch on. The obvious is that this is a national jurisdiction and they are attempting to mimic it with a provincial level bill. I would argue that legislation regulating internet access is best addressed at a national rather than a provincial level. The Liberals said that the lead started at a sub-national level in Australia, but what they failed to admit is that there is no subnational law in Australia ever passed. And in fact, this law is not yet in effect in Australia, even on a national level. It would come into effect it won't come into effect for a number of months, and it is unclear how this will be implemented, and I'll come back to that point. Regarding Norway, Norway also has not brought into effect a social media ban. In fact, on a government website, they write, developing effective enforcement mechanisms for an absolute age limit is both a legal and technological frontier. Currently, there are no fully effective solutions for age verification, and I can table that document as well. So, neither of the two countries that the Liberal Party point to actually have laws currently in effect with methods for verifying age. And that's because the only plausible way to ensure no one under the age of 16 uses social media is through ID verification. The information technology website, The White Hatter, and I can table that as well, has an article that touches on the proposed Liberal bill. And they write, a major concern we have with the 16+ age verification legislation to enforce it, platforms need photo ID, biometric scans, or use third-party services from all users, not just youth and teens, but from adults as well. While marketed as secure, we guarantee these age verification companies create tempting targets for hackers and even hostile state actors. So, this bill, if implemented, effectively will require users to upload their ID to servers controlled by Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and other media giants where it is unclear how that information will be stored or managed. There is a headline from The Guardian just earlier this month regarding Australia. Not just under 16s, all Australians' social media users will need to provide their age. It could be complicated and time-consuming, and I can table that as well. I don't believe legislating that Nova Scotians provide these media giants with their ID is a solution or a correct path to limiting access for young people to social media. Facial age scans may also be part of what Australia implements. requiring social media sites to scan faces of new accounts to verify age of already existing accounts. And another Guardian article in July writes, measures to deploy by online services could include looking at your account history or using facial age assurances and bank card checks, identified checks using IDs such as driver's license to keep children under 16 off social media will also be logged into accounts and search engines. When the Liberals had their press conference about this bill, they mentioned Florida as moving ahead with a media ban for children. Signed into law by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. What they ignored is that that law is not in effect and is being blocked by a federal judge. The same goes in 2023, signed by a Republican governor in Utah, which was blocked. A similar bill signed by a Republican governor in Arkansas was also blocked by a federal judge, and I can table sites of those as well. I raise examples of the United States simply for the purpose of highlighting how limited examples of implementation there are. The Liberals' own bill does not prescribe a way to verify if a user is under the age of 16. They point to no examples on how to implement this because the easiest way for social media companies to implement this is to simply require uploading a personal ID to social media giants, which raise significant privacy concerns. As I already said, without examples of how this would be implemented, this legislation is more of a headline than it is an actual policy. In conclusion, I want to assure families across Nova Scotia that our government is a partner in keeping children safe from social media harms. We've acted in schools where we've implemented a comprehensive cell phone directive to restrict access to phones in classrooms, whereby limiting access to social media throughout the school day. We have a curriculum to educate students, age-appropriate lessons on healthy online relationships, privacy, disinformation, and ethics. We've expanded options for mental health support for kids at no cost through universal mental health care, and addictions care. We will continue to work for opportunities to support youth across Nova Scotia. We support holding high-tech giants accountable, building stronger online safeguards, but this proposal would be best implemented at a national level. And even then, deep discussions should be had about how this would actually be implemented to protect kids, while also protecting the privacy of all Canadians. The Liberals failed to point to a method where this legislation has been successfully implemented to do either of these things. I appreciate the discussion on this. We are happy to keep the conversation going with a focus on practical steps to keep youth in Nova Scotia supported and safe. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Sydney, member 2.
No, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm really honored to rise in my place to join the debate on such an important conversation to have across this province and really around the world. I do want to recognize the gallery, the folks in the gallery today for their leadership, for their compassion, and for their love of supporting our kids. Obviously the government has indicated they're not going to support the legislation, but the goal was first and foremost to have the conversation. And I can tell you from traveling around Nova Scotia, we talk about a lot of issues, Madam Speaker. Great response, just a great way to get around and just gauge what people are saying. But there was one conversation in particular for me that I had with a grade 11 student in Halifax. And this conversation around social media came up. And she laid it out for me, Madam Speaker, the dangers, the anxiety, the stress that her friends feel if they're not on social media. That's where this has become. Social media has become such a avenue for everything in our life, and to hear the stories of the impacts that her friends had early on in their life as a result of being on social media, it's heartbreaking. It is, and as I said, I want to thank the people in the gallery and advocates around our province and really around the world who are opening up about this conversation around social media and how fast social media is, the evolution of social media, and how we really need to have this conversation about age limits to ensure that we're doing whatever we can to help our kids be kids. I do want to table, Madam Speaker, a letter from Jonathan Had, who is the author of The Anxious Generation, and I thank him for his letter. Because in his letter he says, by putting this bill forward, Nova Scotia can spark a broader conversation across Canada and signal to parents everywhere that their concerns are being taken seriously. This legislation builds on Nova Scotia's history of leading on public policy, on public safety, from banning cell phones while driving to removing them from classrooms, and once again puts children's well-being at the center of policy. Establishing minimum age for social media is a sensible and necessary step that we hope the current Nova Scotia government will give strong consideration. So I'll table that, Madam Speaker. And I can say in my over 10 years as MLA, I've seen a lot of issues come across my desk. We've tabled a lot of bills in this House on the government side and on the opposition side, but this was one that completely engaged families across the province, because finally somebody was going to have a conversation about this, and I think it gave a lot of thought for people who started coming forward and telling their stories. And to the member opposite, the national level plays a big part in this. It does. And this is something that we're talking to our federal colleagues about with the national government. I would hope, the government today put out an op-ed. I'm not sure if it was tabled or not, Madam Speaker. If I'm not going to reference the letter directly, but I will say that the best thing the government could do is send a letter to the federal government to ask for their dialogue. That could be the best takeaway from this debate today. If they're not going to support this bill, instead of an op-ed, let's spark that conversation at a federal level, because we've seen it in other jurisdictions where this conversation is actually started at a state level and then made it to the national level. So that would be my ask for the government today. If you're not going to support the bill, at least send the correspondence. Let's and let's all have a conversation. Politics and partisan parties aside. And let's have a debate. And let's have a chat about. Let's have a talk with our federal colleagues, who are very interested in this too as well. We had the opportunity to talk to many of our federal colleagues this weekend at our AGM. It was a great opportunity for the member and I from Timberlea Prospect to talk to them about the importance of why we are bringing this forward, which they also see. They see this too as well, and I'm sure that the journey may take some time to get there, but they know we're debating this today. They're well aware of it. We know they're paying attention to this. And as I said, if the government is not going to support the bill that we've tabled here today, what the government can do is work with us, to work with our national colleagues, also with the NDP caucus too as well, to talk about this conversation and send a unified letter to the federal government to say this is something that's important in Nova Scotia. We want to continue to have this conversation, but ultimately the decisions and some of the legislation will be made at a national level. So if I could move a motion to do that, I know you can't, but that would be my goal from today, is that we, as three parties and as our independent, that we all say, you know what, we're not going to let this conversation die today because we're not going to support a bill. we're going to continue this conversation, united as 55 MLAs to say, let's have a conversation with our federal colleagues. This matters to all of us. You know, whether you believe in the bill, or we can sit here and debate this particular bill. It's not going to pass today. But I know, in my experience with all of you in here, at some level, at a professional, personal level, we all care about our kids. There is no question. We all want the best for our kids. That's why governments come in and they pass policies around making sure that our kids can have a healthy breakfast or have a healthy lunch, or in the government's case, issues around cell phones in the classroom. That was a good move. It was a very good move. And that student in grade 11 that I talked about that. And it was a transition. It was a transition for students, but they got used to it. They did. They got used to it. And they actually, this student in particular, said it's meant a lot. It has. It's meant a lot around, just putting it down and having a conversation with their friends and just learning to not, take a break from it. And I think that's a great example of what this government has done that we support. Now we're into this conversation. And I fundamentally believe, as my colleague does, and I do want to thank him now that he's back, I want to thank him on the record on the floor of the legislature for the work and the advocacy that he did around this. This is a big conversation for him and I. We both have young children, right? We both have young children that are, really young children. But this is a conversation for us. I have two daughters, and one's 11 and one's 9, and they're in that realm where they start hearing from their friends, and we make decisions as families not to at this point, of course, because we have some concerns. That's really kind of the message that I wanted to put out today, is that you're hopeful that the government will support a bill if it comes forward. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does. But I don't think anybody on the floor of this legislature disagrees with the principle of this. Nobody disagrees with the foundation of this. But how do we get there? We wanted to start this conversation, and we all have families. Many of us are raising families here in the legislature, and I have no doubt that you have the similar conversations that we've had with many Nova Scotians about bringing this bill to the floor. So, that would be my hope today, that all 55 of us could send a letter, or whomever in government, with the support of all of us, indicating that every MLA supports the idea of extending this conversation around what we can do to look at legislation specific to this, where we're limiting age before access, but also to continue the conversation around the challenges and the stories that we're hearing from kids that are being impacted by social media. And we all have examples. It is unfortunately, all of our offices have had many conversations with families about what is taking place online, social media. It's really heartbreaking, and I think that we can't just let this go today. I think we need to continue to have the conversation. So. I really want to thank, again, I really want to thank the Nova Scotians that have come forward and really give credit to Jenna Post is in the gallery today, who did a ton of work helping us on this. I really can't thank her enough for her advocacy on this, and it was an honor to stand with her when we did the announcement a few weeks ago. So it's as I said, this is one of those bills where we debate lots of topics in here. Some get more heated than others. Some die on the floor here very quickly. But we don't want this to stop today. We want to continue to have this conversation today, and I think the government. That's the one thing that they can do today, is just You're not going to support this bill, but I fundamentally believe that everybody in this House supports what needs to happen. And I think we can all stand united as MLAs here in the legislature to send a letter to Ottawa, who I also said I know who's paying attention, to say we want to have this conversation about supporting our kids. And I've said it multiple times, letting our kids be kids. That's really, I'm very hopeful for that. So, Madam Speaker, with that, again, thank you for the opportunity to talk on this bill. I appreciate the comments from all over Nova Scotia. We received thousands of them. I appreciate the love and the support and the compassion from the advocates all around this province and beyond, who have applauded my colleague and applauded the advocates for bringing this forward. Nova Scotia has been a leader when it comes to, as in the letter that I tabled, you know, there's lists, there's a vast list of this province being progressive, being first out of the gate on you know, you look at smoking flavored tobacco, you look at some of the policies that we've already put in place to support our kids around ensuring that they have mental health supports, national programs that have been recognized nationally to ensure that our kids have the safest environment possible in the school system. As I said, most recently, the phone ban, which was a huge success. This can be one of them too. That we can be a leader in this. We can really lead the way nationally on this. When it comes to doing whatever we can to ensure that our kids can be kids, but also beyond that age limit, informing our kids and educating our kids around, you know, social media, the effects, the negative impacts it can have on social media that have affected so many families that I've talked to across the province. So with that, Madam Speaker, I will adjourn debate on Bill 133.
The motion is to adjourn debate on Bill 133. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried.